So I'd like to welcome everybody to another in our series of teaching online webinars. My name is Sam Anneman in the Center for Teaching and Learning, and I will be the host today. So before we get started, just a few some housekeeping items I'd like to go over. So of course, if you have any sound problems, just click the audio button and run that little wizard. If you have any other issues, technical issues during the session, please call WebEx support. That number is 866-229-3239. And if you need to leave temporarily, please, from the emoticon menu, use the coffee cup button to let us know that you have stepped out. And finally, if you have any questions you'd like to ask, you can raise your hand and ask them via the mic. And at any time, you can type comments and questions into the chat, and we'll be monitoring those, and our presenter will be able to answer those. And we are recording this session, and I will send a link to the recording later this week. I'd like to introduce, I'll do a very short introduction of our speaker, our presenter this time, Beth Oyarzun from the Instructional Systems Technology Program in the College of Education. Beth is actually very new to us full-time. She only started full-time with us in this semester. Is that right? Yes, this semester. And she teaches completely online. So when she talks to you about research-based best practices in online cooperative learning, she really knows what she's talking about. So please, everyone, let's give a nice round of applause to Beth Oyarzun.
Thank you, Sam, for that very nice, warm introduction. Like you said, and you pronounce my name so well. Most people don't even try, they just say Beth O. So thank you. I'm going to share my screen really quickly so to pull up the slides that I'm going to share with you today. So your screen may change momentarily. Okay. Hopefully you are able to see my screen now. All right, so a little bit about myself. Like Sam said, I've been an online instructor now for over 10 years. I've been teaching education courses online. I just received my doctorate in May of 2016 in Instructional Systems Technology, and I'm happy to be joining UNC Charlotte as of January as a clinical assistant professor. My background before that was that I was a high school mathematics teacher for 9 years. So I've been teaching and learning for a long time. I would like to start, if possible, having everybody do a short introduction of themselves so I know who I have in the audience today. If you are unable to use your microphone, that's fine. I'll just go down the list and see if you're able to chat. So if you could give me your name, your department, and what you expected to learn from today's training. We'll start with Enoch.
Hello, can you hear me?
I can.
Sure, my name is Enoch Park. I'm also new to UNC Charlotte. I'm serving as the quality nurse and online learning specialist. And today I'm definitely interested in learning research-based practices for the collaborative learning. And also, welcome to UNC Charlotte, yourself too.
Oh, you too, thank you. Heather? You could just click your mute button. Yes, I can hear you.
I'm Heather Bastian. I'm the Associate Director of the Communication Across the Curriculum program. So we work with departments to help them incorporate writing and speaking into their curriculum. And so I am interested in just having more tools, more options to be able to provide to faculty and help them talk about communication in their online courses and including face-to-face. So that's great.
Great. Well, the things that we'll be talking about today do have face-to-face implications as well, but I would be specifically talking about strategies for online learning. Can you mute your microphone back, please? Oh, thank you, Heather. And Jeff?
Hi, can you hear me?
Mm-hmm.
My name is Jeff McAdams. I'm one of the research librarians here at UNC Charlotte, and we're always looking for new ways to engage with students to teach them, about research skills, information literacy, and trying to do more assignments and tutorials and training online. And so, and one of the things we want to do is be more engaging online instead of more passive, I suppose.
Great. Thank you. Lynn?
Hi, I'm not sure if you can, looks like you can hear me. I am Lynn Wall, and I am an instructional designer in the Center for Teaching and Learning. I am just very interested to see this presentation and how faculty are approaching cooperative learning.
Great. Thank you. And I believe it was Teresa, right? You said your name was Teresa?
Yes, hi, Teresa Gaston. I'm a clinical assistant professor in the School of Nursing, and I teach in 100% online in undergraduate and graduate nursing programs, and I'm also doing quality matters as well. So I'm looking forward to learning whatever tools I can try out, and this is my first year full-time at UNC Charlotte.
Great. Thank you, Teresa. I'm also Quality Matters certified, and I'm a certified peer reviewer and have been a trainer for Quality Matters. I have several of you mentioned that. First of all, let me just preface, before we get started into the definitions and research, why I am interested in cooperative learning online. I began teaching online, like I said, 11 years ago. And quickly, interaction has become a big issue in online learning. Initially, I think discussion boards and interaction was the big piece of how students interacted online, because instructors were like, if we're going to give them 3 hours of credit, we have to see them do the work. And so this per module discussion board thing grew. And when I was a student, I took many classes online. A lot of the students were frustrated, felt like I heard one student at one time call the module-based discussion boards with the online worksheet. It's just a knowledge check. And I think that's typical in how it's used. So I began doing research papers on the best practices for interaction and discussion board use in online learning. And most of the research says that discussion boards is not a bad tool. It's just a lot of times it's not used appropriately. So I then went into methodologies and how can we use these tools effectively in online learning. And that's how I landed in cooperative learning and how to do it effectively online. I began looking at face-to-face strategies that were successful in face-to-face classes and how could we apply them in the online environment. So with that being said, let me get started with just a definition of cooperative learning online. This is just a basic definition from Johnson & Johnson. It's when students work together to accomplish shared learning goals. So the idea is that students are working together to achieve something within a class that is defined by the instructor. Some of the effectiveness of this strategy is listed here for face-to-face and online. And a lot of interaction research says it increases learner satisfaction, but I was really interested in how to increase learners' achievement. And that's how I landed in looking at cooperative learning, because it does, in the face-to-face research, say that it increases learners' achievement. And there's not a whole lot of research of this methodology in online learning. So a lot of the strategies that I'm going to be giving you today are based upon my research and practice that I've used within classes. And please feel free to stop me at any time if you have questions. Like Sam said, there's a raise hand button, or there's not very many of us, so if you want to just unmute and ask a question at any time, feel free to do so. And so basically there are 5 elements of cooperative learning, and they're listed here. We're going to go into each one of them to explain what they are, and then I'm going to give you examples of how these can be set up in online courses. So the 5 elements are positive interdependence, individual accountability, interpersonal and small group skills, promotive interaction, and group processing. So what do these things mean? Positive interdependence is when the groups perceive that they cannot succeed at the task without the group, okay? So everyone in the group has to achieve the goal. So this means they have to have a common goal. Several ways to do this are to assign group roles, and I'll give you some examples here in a few minutes. Have different task assignments within the larger task, or have a different resource assignment. So basically, individuals need to feel responsible for some part of the project, but not the whole project. And then they are the pieces of the puzzle. Each individual is responsible for one piece of the puzzle that then all puts together to make the whole project. The individual and group accountability, this is where learners are accountable for doing their own work and the work of the group. So basically, the way you can manage this is have a graded task for an individual and then a graded task for the group. And we're going to look at some examples of that again in a moment. You can also have evaluation of each individual group member. Like if they have certain roles, then you could evaluate how they did that role. And then you could also have them evaluate the whole group and how it performed through the task. Next is teaching them the interpersonal small group skills. You know, business and industry, the more it moves online, the more this online collaborative teamwork in their jobs is happening. And so how do we teach them how to do this? And I think that should be an important part of online courses. We should be teaching students how to collaborate and work with others online. But this is basic group work skills. So ways to achieve it online is maybe have a group member profile at the very beginning of the course, which it's like a social networking profile, but they give you their choices in how to work with a group, whether they like to use Google Docs, what their schedule is, what topics they're interested in to do the project, so they could fill out some information that would help the instructor then group students that have similar online working styles, similar schedules, and similar topic interests. And then having a module within the course to specifically teach these types of skills and the tools associated with them. So if it's going to be collaborative editing on a wiki, they have tutorials for that wiki and how to use it, and then how students should interact on it. Promotive interaction, and this involves what type of task you're going to give them to do. So the task that's given should be required ongoing conversation. It shouldn't just be, here's the task, here's the rubric, complete it, here's your grade. So it should be some sort of processing task oriented. And again, I'm going to give you a couple of examples here in a moment. And then lastly is the group processing. So in these types of projects, a lot of times this is a new way of working in the online environment for students. So after it's complete or even during the process, it's nice to sort of reflect on how it's going, what could be done better, how could you revise in the future, is everybody on the team doing well? And you can do that by having different checkpoints throughout the course, letting students reflect here and there throughout the project, but especially at the end, and then let them evaluate each other and the group process throughout. And so the way I think of this is if you look at your course level outcomes, goals, objectives, this would be revolving around one of the larger pieces of the course. So a semester-long project or a project that spans more than one module of the course. So here's an example outline. And this is based on many online courses are separated into folders or modules. And I have 7 modules here, but that doesn't mean you couldn't have 15. Some people do it weekly. Some people do it, by units. You could have as little as 4 or as many as 15. I just happen to have 7 here in this particular example to show you how you could sort of sort out some of those practices within an online course environment. So starting on the left, you would have your introduction module where you could have students fill out these group profiles as part of the introduction discussion board to give that information. You could introduce what the project is going to be about and the rubrics associated with it and what the deadlines are going to be. Then in the next module, you could actually form the groups, announce who's in what groups, and you could use the announcements tool within the learning management system to do that, or email. And then this is where you could have some folders or tutorial videos for how group work is going to occur and have them practice some of those skills. It's always nice to have a practice before there's the heaviness of the grade, the stress of getting graded. So you can have them practice on the wiki or on the, Google Doc or whatever you're going to have them collaboratively creating. Then the next 4 modules are just samples. You can have as many as 5 checkpoints or as many as 2. But what we do recommend is that one of the checkpoints be an individual checkpoint, one of them be a group checkpoint. And so they could be smaller pieces of the larger project, like the pieces of the puzzle. And then in the interim, have them do a reflection evaluation when something is not due. Then toward the end of the project, you could have them do a presentation, a cumulative presentation, or submit the final project, and then reflect and evaluate on the entire process and the group members. So I sort of see these projects sort of living on top of the modules. And what this project is having them do is collaboratively work that drives them into the content of the course to get answers for what they need to help them achieve the project across modules. And again, this could be for a portion of the course or for the entire course. But I do see that they span more than one module, as you see here. So, for a couple of examples, and these came from my dissertation research, and I'm going to try to describe them in more detail than what I have here on the bullet points. But again, feel free to stop and ask questions if you have any. The first one here is a clinical disease assignment that they had for a biology course that was made for nurses. I think Lynn said she was a nursing professor. And this is a course for nurses. So what they had to do was learn how to diagnose infectious disease. I'm sorry, I should say infectious disease, not clinical disease. Infectious diseases. And so the individual part, the students were introduced to the project very early on, similar to the folders that I've given you there. And then the instructor assigned each of them a different infectious disease that were separated by different parts of the body. So the first thing the students had to do was do a research paper on their infectious disease. So that's the content that they owned and became an expert in. The next part of the project became the interactive piece, which is where they became a patient with their infectious disease. And then in the discussion board, which they think 7 of the discussion boards that were different parts of the body. So there was the arms area. If your disease was in that area, you went to that discussion board and you posted as a patient. And from your research paper, you had to then decide what symptoms you were going to have. And then the rest of the people in the course would try to diagnose the different diseases. So all these different diseases were posting, these different patients are posted with different diseases in different areas. This discussion board ended up with, I don't know, 1,200, I think, posts, which wouldn't be, they weren't substantive posts by definitions that you see a lot of people talking about in online learning. They were very conversational in nature. It's like, how are you feeling today? Oh, I'm not feeling so well, my stomach hurts. And so they were just going through trying to figure out, and that's that conversational piece. It didn't happen in one sitting. There was a promotive interaction. So people had to keep continuing the conversation to get more information. Okay. And so then they had to diagnose after that. So they had to submit diagnostics papers individually after that. So you see how this sort of spanned through the course and had individual accountability, promotive interaction. And then she did have them reflect on the end about how you would do things differently. Would you have diagnosed differently if they got the diagnosis incorrect? So you can sort of see how those elements are present in this particular project. And what's funny is this instructor, she's like, it was just some harebrained idea that she had. She wasn't thinking about these in the cooperative learning realm. She was trying to do something interesting and fun for the students, and she did. There's definitely a motivational piece with it too, and the students really enjoyed the class and the project. And I think they learned a lot as well. The gerontology, this is also nursing, and I was an instructional designer in the College of Health and Human Services previously, at my previous institution. That's why these are more in the health realm. But this was a group project that they did, again, over the span of the course. So they had to identify topics, sort of like that profile thing that I mentioned before at the beginning in gerontology that they were interested in. Each team had to review research articles. So they had to submit an individual review of a scholarly article in that area. And then collectively, they had to create a research presentation about that topic based on the articles that the group found. And then after that, they recorded a presentation and they submitted it to the discussion board of the course. And then the rest of the class peer reviewed each of the presentations, and then they got to edit it and submit it for final review to the instructor. So again, you can sort of see the pieces that I mentioned before, the 5 elements of cooperative learning and how they're representative of these in these projects. And so what I'd like to do, and I know this is the shorter part of the presentation, but I believe in cooperative learning. So what I'd like to do now is have you think through what you've just heard. I want to give like 5 minutes. I'm just going to mute my microphone and let you think. And this is a cooperative learning technique called Think, Pair, Share. Okay, so I'm going to take 5 or so minutes to just mute my microphone and let everybody think about these ideas and how you could apply them in what you're doing, whether it's a course or professional development. And then in 5 minutes or so, I would like to send you to breakout rooms. And it'll happen randomly. You'll just end up with one other person and let you two talk about what you thought about. And then after that, come back to the whole group and sort of process or reflect on what you've talked about. And so I'd really just spend more time at the end, the next half of the workshop, letting you apply these ideas to what you do in your work. So with that being said, I'll stop talking. So we're going to take five or so minutes to think about this. Okay. Hopefully you had a moment to think about these ideas and how you would apply them into your course or in your work. And the next part, what we're going to do is the pair, which will send you to breakout sessions. But Teresa, unfortunately, since you're on mobile, it won't let you go into a breakout session, so you'll stay with me. But everybody else in the list will go to a breakout session, but Teresa and I can talk, and Sam. So you will get a pop-up window that says you've been invited to a breakout session. You'll click OK. One of you will be assigned the presenter in the room, so you'll have audio and chat to talk to one another. Then at the end of the session, when I click stop in about 5 or 10 minutes, another window will pop up and says the session's going to end in 30 seconds. And you can either wait for that 30 seconds or go ahead and end now, and that's going to bring you back to this room. So are there any questions before I send you? Okay, and again, what you're talking about in these rooms is how you would apply these ideas in a course or in a workshop or in your work. Okay. All right, I'm going to start the sessions now. And Teresa, are you there? It's just you and I here. To the big room, and I think, yeah, hopefully you had some productive conversation. I know Teresa and I did, and we'll just go around and share as a group if you don't mind. If you would have a group representative, or we could all go down the list and share what were your thoughts in your group. Enoch?
Yes, I had teamed up with Sam, and we talked about some new features in Canvas and also the integrated technology available that on our campus. So my the cooperative works examples include developing a wiki page with small groups. The advantage of wiki or wiki-like projects is that everyone's contribution can be trackable, and many students like that, and there's no more dispute about the who's doing and who's not. And so one of the ideas about the cooperative learning is that the each members will get specific roles assigned, so that on top of interdependency, the individual participants also have their set roles. So they can complete their individual part as well as completing the group work as a completion of the project. And Sam shared us that since we are integrating Google Apps, Google Docs and Pages can be used for the classroom purpose very easily. There's no separate access and logins and credentials. And as simple as a one-pager to more complicated, sophisticated product can be integrated in the classroom. And Canvas also has the cooperative functions available, so those will be readily available for faculty. And as the groups can develop, and depending on their level of study, more sophisticated projects can also be developed.
Great. I'm just taking notes of.
Thank you.
Hey, Beth, are you still there?
Can you hear me?
Yes, now we can. We seem to have lost you there for a little bit.
I think I stepped on my mute button. Sorry about that. Okay.
There you are. You're back. You're back.
Okay. How about you, Jeff? What did y'all share in your group?
Yeah, I talked with Lynn. I'm a librarian, so I don't have a class of my own. We often sort of kind of embed ourselves, if we can, with other courses. And so we're talking about trying to, partner with somebody to integrate this as a group project. Classes that already have group projects. I work with engineering students mostly, and they do a lot of group projects, but it would be really important for me to sort of help design this in conjunction with an instructor so that they not only have the requirements of the assignment from their instructor, but also what I teach are research skills, so that they would have that in conjunction with the reflection. And it's interesting, most of the assignments that I create for research skills are reflective. That's pretty much all they are, is to say, here's this concept of doing research, which seems really basic, but once you reflect on it, then it requires you to say, like, oh, I'm doing something on purpose, rather than just something that's intuitive to me. It's like a directed thing. Anyway, so we just talked about ways to try to get people to get students to kind of participate in something that they may not have to if their instructor doesn't require that.
Yeah, I think that brings up a great additional point that take it outside of the classroom. I know a lot of institutions that are moving online programs are how to integrate some student services into the online environment. So just the library and the career center, and how, if resume building is part of a project within a class, how could the student services sort of infuse some service into that group project, or research services like you're stating? How could you sort of infuse some of those services into that cooperative project, or have students use the service like their writing center and such too? So I think that's an interesting take, and how to involve more than just the instructor and the students in these collaborative or cooperative projects. Okay, Lynn, did you have anything to add from that group?
No, I was just telling Jeff at the end that as an instructional designer, it's really valuable to hear all of the different approaches to cooperative learning and the different goals that everyone has, because I definitely have a different approach goal for cooperative learning when I speak with faculty about setting up activities and sort of assignments and group work, and then speaking with Jeff, who is from the library, a little bit of a different focus there, so really valuable.
Yeah, I think you're right. It's nice to hear the different perspectives, and then how we can all help each other cooperatively as well, and also help the students. And Teresa, I'll let you go from our group. It's still there.
Hi. Well, we mostly talked about I'm teaching online, and I did appreciate the input about library resources especially for online students. And that is a huge struggle I have with my students that are 100% online, is research links and papers and resources to help them do their group work. We have a huge deficit in that area. And so I greatly appreciate his input on that. I like the idea of the checkpoints and the evaluation steps. Right now I'm probably running 5 online group projects at the moment, and it really never crossed my mind to have some type of checkpoint. I'm not sure how I'm going to go about that. It might just be something simple as an email to each student, or post something in Canvas to see how everybody's doing. We also talked about evaluation, and this is something that I'm really lacking on because we don't really have group evaluation tools that we're using. So I'm learning that I need to go look in the research and in the literature, and my goal, I don't think it'll happen this semester, but maybe by August, is to find a tool that, whether I set it up within Canvas or borrow an outside tool, for students to have some type of peer review or peer evaluation on the group online process, because they do all of theirs virtually and all of it online, all of their group work. But I feel like we don't often give them the tools to do that, because as teachers we have to have the tools first, typically, before we can give it to them and show it to them and encourage them to use it. So that's really what we focused on, was the checkpoint and evaluation.
Thank you. Thank you, Teresa. I think these are all great resources. I just encourage people to think sort of outside the box, I guess, is to be cliche about it, and having students collaborate online, and setting up roles. I had a business professor that she was doing group projects, and this was for a face-to-face class, and she was so frustrated with it. The students were frustrated with it. They kept coming up on her evaluations. And just the addition of the roles for a business course really helped her out. She gave them the ability, since it was a business course, she gave them the ability to fire people if they weren't doing their job properly, and then they have to regroup and get into another, rehire into another group. So it turned out that they were learning skills that they needed for business and industry within the group work. The same for my education courses. I use a lot of group work and peer evaluation because they need to learn to give constructive feedback because they're going to be teachers. So if we can build these kind of activities, such as applied learning of sorts, into these projects across, I think it can be valuable for students learning and learning to collaborate and cooperate with others online. With that being said, I am going to give you my contact information quickly. The last slide, and I put the link to the slides in the chat, so you can get there. And here's the references. The bottom two are my my dissertation and my pilot study for my dissertation, and the rest of them were from the slides, the beginning research of the slides. And that's my email and my cell phone number. Since I'm currently working remotely, I haven't moved to Charlotte yet, so that's my cell phone. But so I do prefer text messages over phone calls because I won't answer numbers I don't know. But if you have any questions, I'm happy to answer or chat. Yes, Sam says peer review is available in Canvas, so you can set it up. You can set up peer review assignments within Canvas, which is nice. Any other questions, comments?
Well, okay, I hope everyone has had a chance to get Beth's contact information. Before we,
thank you, Jeff. So
before we end, I'd just like to thank Beth for a really excellent presentation. Let's give her some applause there. Very good. And we hope to have you come back and present again for us, Beth, sometime in the future. So before we end, I'd just like to highlight a few upcoming webinars that we have next month, in case you're interested. So on the 7th, we have another in our series of webinars based on Students' Pathway to Success, a faculty guide, which was an ebook created by our top 40 Academy faculty back in 2005. And they're going to be talking about the chapter on diversity, inclusion, and cultural awareness. And then on the 12th, Bobby Hobgood from the Languages Resource Center will be presenting the last in his series on delivering good web conferencing, and that one will be on presentation materials at POP. And then our final Teaching with Technology series presented by CTL will be on a topic that I think that everyone will be interested in, final grade preparation in Canvas. It's not as straightforward as you think, so we want to help you through that process so that you and your students will know what the final grades will be when you upload them into Banner. So please go ahead and sign up for those if you want to. And then finally, before we wrap up, since it's the middle of the afternoon, and I know everyone's probably getting a little hungry perhaps, but I want to offer you a virtual dessert. So if you'd like, please go ahead and indicate in chat which is your favorite dessert, and I will have that delivered to you virtually as soon as this session is over. So just let me know. And also, I know that Beth, you did post the link to your presentation, but if it's okay, I'll go ahead and put that link on the webinar event page. So if people lose it, they will always have it there, if that's all right. And then finally, I just want to thank everybody for attending, and we hope to see you at a future webinar, CTL special event, or even our workshops. So thanks again, and thanks, Beth.
Thank you for having me.